Hello and welcome back to Legion Alpha. Demonology was released last week and today I'm just going to talk about what's changed, what's new and also what I think. So if you want opinions on someone who actually mains a Warlock at a higher level rather than just some streamer who scrolls through spells not knowing what the fuck's changed, then keep watching. I also have an affliction video if you want to go on my channel and check that out. Some things like demonic shititude and demonic circle being a talent I've covered there, so I'll just be skimming over them in this video. I'll start off talking about what's changed with demo, then I'll talk about the talents, then the artifact traits, and finally I'll show you the playstyle. I'll also give my feedback and opinions on things as we go along, so if you want to skip to certain sections, I'll put the timestamp in the description below. Otherwise, here we go. So, if you live in a cave and didn't already know, Demonology has had a big overhaul in Legion. They say it's because it was too complicated and needed add-ons to play, but come on, it's really because they were giving half-ass shit to demon hunters. That's the reason. Don't let them tell you any different. So, what's changed? Well, meta and alt effects have been removed, so you might as well just forget about all that. It's gone. Soul shards are now our main resource, and we use them to summon different types of demons, which I'll show you in a sec. Doom is now our only dot, and it also works a bit differently to how it does on live. It only ticks once after 20 seconds and also generates a soul shard. Now the duration is actually reduced by haste, which is nice. And one thing to note is you can refresh Doom before it expires and it will still tick and partially tick like any other dot and generate a shard both times. So it won't be like, you know, the old Agony where you had to let it fall off before reapplying it. So yeah, that's pretty decent. Shadow Bolt is still our filler. It still deals a low amount of damage, but it now also generates a soul shard when it hits. So you can think of it as simply a soul shard generator and nothing more. So moving on to new demons, we still have the Felguard first as a normal pet, although he's very squishy at the moment and gets, you know, raped by everything out in the world. We also get called Dreadstalkers, which cost 2 shards. And like it says, summons 2 Dreadstalkers. Now, as you can see, I have 3, but that's because of an artifact trait, which I'll talk about them later. Hand of Gul'dan now spawns imps, depending on how many shards you use. It spawns up to 5 at the cost between 1 and 4 shards, but the imps are a little bit buggy at the moment, as you can see, and they just stack under the target. Hopefully it'll look cool once it's fixed, so yeah, there's that. So lastly, Doomguard. Like I mentioned in the Affliction video, it's now a 3-minute cooldown, down from 10. It lasts 20 seconds, down from 1 minute, and also costs a soul shard. Now, just as an FYI, our other basic demons also cost a soul shard to summon, but now the cast time's only 2.5 seconds, down from 5, so that's pretty good, I guess. Now, I'll talk about this spell, how it works in a little bit more when I talk about the play style a bit later, but just explain it how it works. Demonic Empowerment buffs our pets, health and haste, and depending on our mastery, it also buffs the damage they deal, which is pretty neat. It only buffs 3 demons as baseline, but because I've got a talent which makes it affect them all, that's why it doesn't say that in this tooltip. Demon Wrath. This is basically a replacement for Hellfire, and can also be cast while moving, but instead of channeling from you, it channels from your demons instead, which fixes the need to be in melee range issue we had with Hellfire, you know, all through the game, which is nice. Now, just to make this clear, despite what you might have heard or read, and despite what people who don't play a Warlock have said about this spell, the damage doesn't increase for every demon you have out. Rather, the number of demons simply determines the area that this spell affects. Yeah, so Demon Wrath only ticks once on each target in the affected area every 1 second or so. It cannot hit the same target 7, 8, 9 times all at the same time. It hits them once and only once per tick. You have to think of it as Hellfire 2.0. There's no extra maths or funny things about it. It's just a Hellfire that ticks once per second on all enemies stood in purple shit. So yeah, there's that. Just hopefully that clears some stuff up. Now, many basic spells are still here, which you can see in my bars if you want to pause the video. Last spells worth mentioning, like I said in the Affliction video, Soul Shatter is gone. We no longer have a way to remove threat. Don't know why. And Demonic Circle is a talent because pro design, yeah. Also, I'm not sure if it's intended or not, but we have no form of passive health regeneration out of combat for either ourselves or our pets. So while questing and soloing content, just be aware you'll probably have to cast Health Funnel a lot and have to eat food a lot if nothing changes, but hopefully it'll be fixed. So next I want to talk about the talents. I'll go through each tier and talk about how they work, say if anything's changed, and also what I think of them. Now, unlike the Affliction ones, this talent tree actually feels quite nice. There are some placement issues, like the Affliction one, and some odd talents which don't make a whole lot of sense, like the Affliction one, but overall, yeah, it feels quite good. Tier 3 and Tier 5, I'm just going to skim over them really, since I said everything I needed to say in the Affliction video, so you can check out my opinions on them in the Affliction video if you want. Okay, Tier 1, 3 talents, 3 different types of playstyles. Now, Shadow Flame's a cool spell. It's got 2 charges, generates a shard, deals instant damage, and leaves a dot. And, if you time it right, you can actually stack it to 3, which is quite nice, despite only having, 2 charges. Shadow Inspiration, it's the passive talent of this row, I'd say. I think it's got Tool to pair at the moment, as it's actually Hand of Gul'dan that gives a free filler spell, not Demonic Empowerment. So yeah, the talent's pretty cool on its own. It adds a little motility, I guess, with the instant cast, so it works well as that. Demonic Calling is the RNG talent of this row. You can potentially get a free Call Dreadstalker spell by doing your normal rotation, but the talent doesn't affect the cooldown in any way, so it's limited in its usefulness by RNG. I mean, it could be great, you could get free Dreadstalkers every time, but it could be worthless, depending on your luck. Overall, I love to always play with Shadow Flame. It's just a nice little spell, adds some complexity to the rotation, and you can do some cool stuff with it. So yeah. Tier 2 talents each have their own uses. Now, Impending Doom makes Doom ticks summon 2 imps. It's great for multi-target fights, and it has some great synergy with some of the other talents at the other end of the talent tree, which I'll talk about later. Improved Dreadstalkers also causes your 2 Dreadstalkers to spawn with imps, which ride them. It's amazing to see. It's a very cool looking spell. I think this will most likely be the best talent for single target fights at the start of Legion, but there's one issue with this talent, and that's Call Dreadstalker's 15-second cooldown isn't affected by haste, whereas Doom's duration is. So, eventually, you get to a point where Doom's duration is less than 15 seconds, making Impending Doom here a straight up DPS increase over this talent, which kind of makes this talent then obsolete. It's a bit strange. Hopefully some things will be done there. Implosion sounds like a cool little AoE spell on paper, but it's only really useful for burst AoE. And when I say burst AoE, I literally mean adds an auto-alive for longer than 5 seconds burst AoE. This is simply because there's actually an artifact trait which does a very similar thing, and it causes imps to automatically have this effect when they die or expire. So yeah, it's a bit of a strange talent. I think a lot better design of this would simply be to have the imps like pulse like an infernal AoE, which might work a bit better than this. Alright, not much to say about Tier 3, like I said. It's in the Affliction video. Only thing worth mentioning here is that Shadow Fury has a cast time, which makes it completely and utterly shit. Definitely needs a rethink. Tier 4 has 2 pretty nice talents. Power Trip will probably be the default talent here. It causes Demonic Empowerment to affect all your demons rather than just the best 3. Pretty nice. Hand of Doom is a nice little AoE spell that works very well with Impending Doom here, meaning that loads of imps can potentially spawn on AoE packs which, live long enough for Doom to tick, which is great. But yeah, like I said, it's also completely useless if ads don't live long enough for Doom to tick, so you just need to use it appropriately. I also mentioned that there's something pretty funny you can do with this spell, this talent even. You can combine it with this talent, Impending Doom, and Shadow Inspiration here, and you can just chain cast Hand of Gul'dan and your filler and spawn loads and loads of imps from Dooms and Hand of Gul'dans. This synergizes so well. Doom spawns imps and generates shards. Hand of Gul'dan spends the shards to spawn imps and refreshes Doom. And Demon Bolt's damage increases mastery with all the imps that you spawn, and also generates a shard. So yeah, it's cool. Then you can even combine it with the artifact traits, and just damage will be insane. Yeah, it's just nice to think about while it lasts. I think it might change, but yeah, it's nice to see. Anyway, moving on. Soul Harvest. It's a bit of an odd one for demo. Now, it works well for Affliction, but it's so easy to generate shards for Demonology that this talent seems pretty pointless. Maybe it could be useful for heavy movement fights where you can't cast your filler, but then Demon Wrath kind of fills this spot as a shard regenerator in these situations. So yeah, I think it just needs to be changed to something else, maybe a proc or something different. Tier 5, not much to say about here that I didn't say in the Affliction video, but just to sum it up, yeah, it's bullshit. Tier 6, basically the same as it is on Live. One thing to note is that Synergy, like on Live, only applies to your Felguard, no other demons. So you might have thought it could be massively overpowered, all the demons you spawn, but unfortunately it isn't. It only affects your Felguard, your main pet. Tier 7, now let's not talk about Demonic Shititude. Boring ass talent, at least a Dynafire. Vented my dissatisfaction with it in the Affliction video, so I'm just going to ignore it. So, Demon Bolt. It's a nice little single target increase. It works much better than it does in Live, as it now does more damage depending on the number of demons you have out. It's a great little single target increase. Cast time is slightly longer than Shadow Bolt. It's 2.5 seconds instead of 2, which is annoying because it kind of fucks up the flow of shard regen, but it looks awesome. Just look at the cast animation. I think it just needs a little tweak in the cast time. Next, Summon Inquisitor. It's a cool little talent. Will probably be only useful for AoE though, I think. One thing to know about it though is it only attacks doomed targets. So assuming it will be an AoE only spell once the tuning's done, I'm not too happy about it only attacking doomed targets, since this almost forces you to take this Hand of Doom talent in the lower tier, which in itself can be useless if the ads are only up for short periods of time. Yeah. So being forced into taking other talents just to make this talent work properly seems a bit like bad design to me. Inquisitor also loses its value quite quickly if all the targets are spread out. You know, you lose potentially loads of DPS as you just try to doom everything up. And there's no real alternative either. You have to do that to make the Inquisitor work. I just prefer maybe if the Inquisitor was an AoE spell in a 20-yard radius or something. You can stick it down, choose where you want it, and therefore control what it'll attack. I think it needs a bit of tweaking. It's still a cool spell, but just needs a bit of tweaking. Okay, so let's move on to the artifact weapon. Firstly, the skull itself. The animation is a little static, a little buggy, and I hope it moves a lot smoother than it does now, but I'm sure it'll be absolutely awesome once it's fixed. Look, it looks pretty cool. As for the passive, your filler will sometimes cause the skull to teleport to the target and deal AoE damage. That's pretty neat. No animation yet, but at the moment on the alpha it deals a shit ton of damage, like loads. It's pretty OP. Next, the artifact spell itself. Now, this spell has a 1-minute cooldown and works by draining 10% life off all your active minions and then blasting that drained amount into the target as damage. Very cool. Will take some planning to probably get the best results, and it also needs to be timed with Demonic Empowerment. So let me explain why that is. So Demonic Empowerment increases your pet's health. So increasing the pet's health, the artifact spell will drain more life and hit a lot harder if your pets will have this Demonic Empowerment buff. Some nice interaction there. No animation yet, and I'm not sure if this is a bug, but it can actually be cast while moving. So we'll see what happens with that. Let's take a look at the other traits. So the first one that kind of contradicts the Implosion one. With this trait, any ad that doesn't need to be melted in 5 seconds will automatically receive the Implosion effect from your imps when they expire. So yeah, makes that Implosion talent very, very niche. Anyway, it's a nice little cool trait on its own, and yeah, it has a cool visual as well. Stolen Power is interesting. Demon attacks have a stacking buff. Demon attacks give a stacking buff, and when it reaches 100, your filler is empowered. Now, I haven't been able to test this properly because I went down the other side, but it says your filler's damage is increased significantly, so I'm assuming it's by a lot. You know, I may be hoping, you know, 10 times or something like that. It'd be good to see once I can access it. The Expendables, funny name. So pets gain a stacking buff when others die. Only really applies to Felguard though, I guess you could say, because that's the pet which will always be active. Still though, 25% damage increase to Felguard is nice, just don't let the squishy cunt die. Next, Dread of Night. It's a bit weird in my opinion. Not the actual trait, but it's only a minor trait, and it's not an elite one, and it's awesome. It just adds an extra Dread Caller, so you always get 3 instead of 2 at the cost of 2 shards. Very nice, and it's great. I'm just not sure why it's minor. This Dreadstalker though, I will say, doesn't spawn an imp if you take the improved Dreadstalker's talent, which I think is a mistake, because then it feeds into that thing I said before about haste kind of devaluing this improved Dreadstalker's talent. If the new one could have an imp also, I think that would fix that problem. Imp Slap causes Hand of Gul'dan crits to give double the number of imps. We'll have to see how well crit scales with this spec to know how good this trait really is, but yeah, it's a nice little thing nonetheless. Finally, this trait down here just gives us a little bit more mana when you life tap, depending on how many demons are up, which is pretty cool, I guess. So playstyle, let's talk playstyle next. My initial impressions after leveling and running some dungeons actually extremely positive compared to how much I hated Affliction. I love how Demonology plays at the moment. It feels fluid, there's some nice interactions, and it really feels, you know, thematically correct. There are a few issues, but since this is early alpha and it's already looking pretty decent, I think this spec could just use a bit of tweaking and will be awesome. One thing to add onto what I said before about the spells, Demonic Empowerment technically has a travel time. It's not a big deal, it's just something you need to remember if you're at max range and are using the artifact spell straight after it. This, like I said before, is because the fact that 10% health siphon from from the artifact, it actually takes place at the start of the cast of the artifact spell. So, to gain the extra benefits from the increased health from Demonic Empowerment, you just may need to add something before the artifact spell cast, just to ensure you get the full effects of the cast. If you understand what I'm saying there. It's also worth noting that our Mastery, which increases the damage of our demons under Demonic Empowerment, is actually snapshotted when you cast Demonic Empowerment. So if you cast it with a Mastery Trinket proc, like, you know, my trinkets here, Mastery Trinket procs, if you cast it with one of those, the damage component of Demonic Empowerment actually increases dramatically. So it just might be useful to know if there's a Legion trinket with a Mastery effect. So let's get on with the playstyle. Generally, for single target, it's all about timing and using spells at the right time. Your rotation revolves mainly around summoning and then buffing the demons, and just that's what you need to remember. It's all about the demon damage, not yours. I'm going to roll with these talents that you can see here. I think these will be the best for single target if things stay as they are. So, spec is very cooldown based. You want to keep Doom up always, refreshing it with a few seconds left. You want to use Call Dreadstalkers on cooldown, followed maybe shortly after by Demonic Empowerment. You want to use Hand of Gul'dan to dump extra shards, and you can even squeeze it in after the Dreadstalkers, so you can also empower the imps. You also want to try and get 3 stacks of Shadow Flame, so on the target. So the timing is key there. You need to cast it just as it's about to expire. You also want to use the artifact spell when you have a lot of demons active and you have Demonic Empowerment up. And then if you've done all that, you can use Demon Ball as the filler and the shard generator. So here we go. I'm just going to stop talking for a minute, just so you can look at what I'm doing. I'm casting. So here we go. So yeah, it's all about using dread collars on cooldown, hand of cooldown to dump shards, buffing pets with demonic empowerment, and fitting in your filler between all those. I use 7 pets for my artifact spell there. You can get more pets active with AoE talents or by pooling your shards a bit more, but I think that 7 could be the number you aim for on the pull when you're using the spell. Okay, next AoE. Let me just get out of combat. Now, this isn't very complicated on its own, but it looks pretty cool. Generally, you want to take these talents, this one, this one, this one. You can then use Hand of Gul'dan to keep Doom up, use the Inquisitor on cooldown, and summon Dread Collars as normal. Keep Demonic Empowerment up on the Inquisitor and the Dread Collars, and simply use Demon Wrath as your filler, so just like this. So yeah, overall I'm liking how Demonology plays, and you can't deny the visuals are cool, because they are. So lastly, before I finish the video, I just want to mention a few things. Now, looking at my logs, the demons do between 80 and 90% of my total damage, single target depending on the boss. This means Blizzard really needs to make everything perfect if this is how it's intended to be. Things like AI, scaling, control commands, all need to be spot on, otherwise we could have a real problem. Also in Legion there's a lot of stuns, knockback effects, which effectively stop pet damage because they affect your pets, for several seconds, which I hope's, are fixed. Similarly, our damage drops to almost 0 if the target flies out of range, moves faster than running speed, or teleports across the room, which is extremely annoying as a supposed ranged class, just to halt your damage. And to be honest, considering how much of our damage actually comes from our demons, it could be a real problem in in Legion when it comes. I'm also worried about the lack of control we seem to have in this spec. In my opinion, it plays very well and you can have a lot of fun with it, but if you kind of look under the surface, there isn't a whole lot else you can do once you've worked out the rotation. With there being no true RNG or big cooldowns, I think players could potentially map out a 5 to 10 minute rotation and they just play it the same every time, with no real engagement. It's just it's a bit funny. One minor workaround I think which could come into play when choosing talents as well is maybe if Dreadstalker's cooldown was reduced by haste. It just seems like that would fit in nicely and would make the spec a little more engaging. I'm also going to mention tracking. So you're going to need add-ons to play this spec properly. Doom timers, to make sure you don't cap on shards when dooms are about to tick. Demon trackers, to make sure you can plan ahead when to use demonic empowerment and when to use the artifact spell. Cooldown and trinket trackers, to know when you should recast demonic empowerment, if you should. And there's also something, it's just, you need add-ons really to play it perfectly. And for a spec where they said it needs to be changed because add-ons, whatever, it's just a joke how ironic this revamp is. You need add-ons to play it. It's just, it's not too much of a big deal, in my opinion, since everyone uses add-ons anyway. I just think it's funny the way they've, done this. It's not very new player friendly, I guess you could say. Finally, cast times are a bit of a problem with this spec. Everything seems to have a cast time, and unless you're just casting, a Shadow Ball, any interruption to a spell is very punishing, resulting in huge DPS losses. You can look at that like this. Demonic Empowerment is a bit like Soulburn Haunt, and Demons are a bit like Affliction's Dots. So you need to keep your dots up, Demons, at all times to do normal damage, but without Soulburn Haunt, Demonic Empowerment, your dots, Demons, hit next to nothing. So, with that being said, movement, knockbacks, stuns during Call Dreadstalkers or Demonic Empowerment casts can lead to periods of time where you do really, really low damage. And I've heard people say, you can plan around it. You can't really plan around it because these spells do the majority of your damage. You need to cast them on cooldown. So any delays result in big DPS losses. Generally speaking, cast times on spells are fine. There's no problem with that. Just not all of them. We don't need every spell to have a cast time. We need to be able to cast something on the move. And before you say, oh, Demon Wrath. Demon Wrath doesn't cut it for most situations. Its damage is shit. I think pet summoning spells such as Call Dreadstalkers and Hand of Gul'dan, they should be instant because, you know, they fit. And the damage dealing and buffing spells such as your Filler and Demonic Empowerment, they should be the cast times. So that's how it is in my opinion. Overall though, I'm happy with how Demo's turned out. It's very nice, very good. Definitely needs some tweaks, you know, cast times, pet survival, health regen, some bizarre talents in there. But hopefully, you know, they'll come, they'll be fixed, and it'll be very fun to play in Legion. So, yeah. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for Destruction when that finally comes out on the alpha. Peace.